والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تمسك بسنته إلى يوم الدين وسلم تسليما كثيرا. أما بعد. We continue in the Buloogh Al-Maraam with the great Imam Ahmad ibn Ali ibn Hajj al-Asqalani rahimahullah, المتوفى سنة 852 ودعا 852 after the Hijrah, Mustafa alayhi salatu wasalam, the great Imam Ahmad ibn Ali ibn Hajj al-Asqalani rahimahullah. On this day, 3:45 p.m. Sunday, January the 20th, 2019, which agrees in the Hijri count Jumad al-Ula, I think it's the 16th. I think it's the 16th of Jumad al-Ula. No, the 13th of Jumad al-Ula, 1440 after the Hijrah, Mustafa alayhi salatu wasalam. We finished the hadith of Jabir ibn Abdullah, where the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam talked about the Yahud. And we said that these narrations all are connected still in the chapter of the book of Nikah, the book of marriage. And we talked about how the Yahud, that they came with different types of not only beliefs, but even in the aspect of Bab al-Mu'amalat, and the aspect of dealings, even on the social level, and to the point where their religion became altered in the aspect or the affairs pertaining to intimacy. As we know, the people of the book, that their religion was altered due to influences by evil, corrupt people who plotted against the prophets and messengers, and alterations and distortions crept in their religion due to evil people who claimed to be scholars that came and started writing things and said it was from Allah, but in actuality it was a lie. So we know that alterations and distortions and changes in newly invented practices and matters were introduced inside Christianity and Judaism. Like we said, to the point where even alterations even crept in to how they would deal with their spouses on a domestic level or social level, and on an intimate level between the two spouses. You'll find that the Yahud also likewise were indulgent in matters that were totally in opposition to what Allah has revealed, until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala corrected what was pleasing to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also what would please the creation of how they can indulge in acts which are pertaining to satisfying one's desires, as long as it's in the boundaries that Allah has set. So you'll find in the narrations that we completed, it said that the Yahud, they used to believe that if a man was intimate with his wife from behind her in her private part, meaning in the private part, that the child will be born cross-eyed. And we said that that's incorrect, that it is permissible for a man to be intimate with his wife or his spouse in this manner, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like we said, as long as you'll find, like we said clearly in the narration, if it's in the private part. And that this is from the ways of the Yahud and from their alterations and from their changes in their religion, to this belief saying that the child will be, if a child's to be conceived, if a child's to be born, it will be born cross-eyed. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as we know in so many ayat, corrected a lot of the beliefs of the Jews, of the different changes and alterations that was introduced into their religion later. Also, likewise, we finished the ayah. We said that the word nazalat, so the ayat was sent down, or it was sent down, or it was revealed. We said that this hadith also, brothers and sisters, is a clear evidence and proof that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is above the heavens. Because it says the ayah descended, or was revealed from above. So the ayat was revealed from above. So that one word is a clear, or one from the many proofs there are, from the many proofs or types of proofs that establish clearly that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is above. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is above the creation. And He has the characteristic of the ulu. The ulu meaning aboveness or highness or loftiness. That He tabarak wa ta'ala is above the heavens. And He is not everywhere or in everything, or nor is the creation one with Him, nor is He one with the creation. Rather, Allah tabarak wa ta'ala is above, always above. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always has the characteristic of the ulu. Ulu meaning, the ulu, that's part of the characteristic of His essence. Allah is always above. Even when He descends to the third of the night, He's still above. And when Allah Ta'ala comes on the day of resurrection, He's still above. And when Allah Ta'ala will come to judge between the creation on the day of resurrection, He will still be above them. So, we said that this ayah, Allah Ta'ala sent down or revealed the ayah. He said that your women are harvest for you, so come to your harvest how you will. So we finished that hadith saying how it's permissible for a man to be intimate with his wife in any direction that he chooses to be intimate with her, as long as it's in the boundaries that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has set, and as long as it's not, like we said, in those matters that are impermissible. For example, if we said in the anus, or while a woman is on her mens, or while she's on her postnatal bleeding. For now, like we said, if she's during her monthly cycle, then we know that it's permissible for a man to be intimate in other parts of the body other than the private part, if that is when one wants to do that. As long as the woman covers herself and makes sure that the aspect of the blood that is being released, so it's coming out from a private part, that she covers it up and hides it as much as possible. And it doesn't necessarily, some people think that it has to be with an izar. It's not necessarily have to cover up with an izar, as long as it's covered up and is concealed with clothes or garments or what have you. It doesn't necessarily have to be izar, as it clearly comes in the narration. But if one wants to do that, then there's no problem with covering his wife up with the izar and fondling and playing with her, as the Messenger of Allah did with Aisha radiallahu anha. As long as, like we said, it's covered and it's concealed, it could be with other garments, and the man can fondle with her and be, if he wants to satisfy his desires in the other manner, other than being intimate with her in the private part, then that is also what is permissible. So all these are matters, like we said, Ya Ma'ashal Ikhwa, was to cater towards benefiting the human being, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has instilled desires in the human beings and allowing them to take pleasure as long as it's in the boundaries that Allah has set. So it says, Nisa'ukum harthun lakum, that your wives are a harvest, meaning that a man plants his seed in the woman and it will bring forth, if Allah has preordained, a harvest. And He said, come to your harvest how you will. Come to your harvest how you will. The narration of that ayah that we talked about, or if you look in your books, it says, come to your harvest how you will, is a refutation against the deviant sect called the Jabriyah. The Jabriyah. The Jabriyah, which is a type of deviance in the qadr. It's a type of deviance in the preordainment and divine decree of Allah, or the destiny of Allah. We said the Jabriyah was a deviant sect from the past they had the belief in the ideology that all the actions of the slaves have been forced upon him or her. They have no choice in the matter. They had no choice in the matter at all. Rather, Allah has forced everyone to do certain actions, and they do not have any choice. And we said that the wording in the ayah, if you look everyone clearly, it says, come to your harvest how you will. Meaning that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has affirmed for the creation that it has a will and that nothing is forced. Meaning that you have the choice to come to your harvest how you will. So based upon that, that clearly shows that the creation likewise have a choice that they choose. So the affirmation of will of the creation, or free choice for the creation, has been established in this narration. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? So the deviant sect called the Jabriyah, which their belief is the slave or the servant has been forced to do actions, which is false. And there's other refutations that I don't have time to mention right now, but we'll suffice by that. But this narration clearly refutes those, or that deviant sect called the Jabriyah. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala clearly in the ayah affirms for the creation a will and choice to choose between what is correct and what is incorrect. Even though the will of the creator, or the will of the creation follows behind the will of the creator. But still, at the end, we affirm that the creation has their will, and they have the will to choose between right and wrong, and to choose between good and evil, and they have a choice. And one of the greatest evidences and proofs to show that one has a free will, or one has a will to choose, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made paradise in the hereafter and a hellfire. A person would say, how is that a proof? Because if the actions were forced upon if the action was forced upon the slave, why is he being punished for something he was forced to do? Or why was he being put in paradise for something he had no choice in? It doesn't make any sense. So that's where you'll find that some of Ahl Ilm they utilize this as a rebuttal against the Jabriyah to say, if that was the case, why in the hereafter is there a paradise and hell? If the person had no choice in any matter, why is he being punished in hell based upon something he had no choice in? And why is a person being put in paradise and in receiving eternal bliss and pleasure eternally because of something they had no choice over? It doesn't make any sense. So you'll find that they use this as a rebuttal to say that if this was the case, that the ibad or the servants were forced upon them, their actions, that would necessitate that Allah is an oppressor, that Allah oppresses. Why do they say Allah oppresses based upon this belief? Because that means Allah punished people for something they had no choice in. And if you punish a person for something they had no choice in, you've oppressed them, right or wrong, everyone? And the same thing. That means that if that was the case, that the actions have been slayed, that means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enters people in paradise just joking and jesting. There wasn't any choice. You had no choice in the matter. You just put them in there, even though it was forced upon them good actions. So all these things don't make any sense. So that's the reason why you'll find that the ideologies and the beliefs of the Jabriyah are rebutted in the Kitab and Sunnah. Because like we said, and there's other instances that we don't have time to entertain of why this belief system is corrupt and it's unacceptable. Because no one, even amongst the creation, no one would accept that you came to someone right now. You just walked up to an individual and for example, let's just say you punched them, or you hurt them, or you harmed them. And then they say to you, I was forced, I had no choice. Would you accept it? Allah forced me to do this. Right now, someone came up to you, smacked you in your face right now, and they said to you, don't blame me, blame Allah, because I was forced to do it. Would you accept that from him? Absolutely not. It's unacceptable. I was forced to do it. I had no choice in the matter. And you'll find that the ulama come from other ayats in the book of Allah, refuting this concept and refuting this notion. In a lot of different ayats, in which I don't have time to talk about right now because that's not the point of the topic of today. But just know that in the ayah, if you look in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ clearly in this hadith affirmed that the creation has free choice, or they have choice, and they have a will to choose between good and evil, and to choose between what is correct and what is not correct. And they have a choice, and that's been affirmed and established in this ayah, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, come to your harvest how you will, which affirms for them what will, their free will, to choose between what is correct and what is not correct, and that this is something that's established in the Kitab and Sunnah, and the will of the creation follows behind the will of the Creator. And the will of the Creator is in the next hadith, which we're about to talk about today. So now if you go to the next hadith, it says on the authority of Ibn Abbas, he said that the Messenger of Allah mentioned, it said, لو أن أحدكم إذا أراد يأتي أهله قال بسم الله اللهم جنبنا الشيطان وَجَنِّبْنِي الشَّيْطَانَ مَا رَزَقْتَنَا. اللهم جنبنا الشيطان وجنبني الشيطان ما رزقتنا فإنه إن يقدر بينهما ولد في ذلك لم يضره الشيطان أبدا. والحديث متفق عليه. It says on the authority of Ibn Abbas that the Messenger of Allah he said, if one of you wants to be intimate with his what? With his family, meaning his wife, of course. And he said, in the name of Allah, O Allah, protect us from the shaitan. Protect us from the shaitan. And we'll talk about this, brothers and sisters, that from this wording, as we'll talk about and discuss in a moment, that if a person does not pronounce in the name of Allah, how the shaitan can share in being intimate with your wife. Yes. Just as shaitan also indulges in sharing when you eat and you do not pronounce his name. When you don't pronounce his name when you eat or when you drink, we know the shaitan shares with you. He shares with you in all these matters, as we'll talk about inshallah. So it says, oh Allah, protect us to keep the shaitan far away from us. Protect us from the shaitan and protect us from the shaitan of what you provide for us. So now it says in the narration, if it's been preordained between the two for the conception or for a child to be conceived in that, meaning in that particular or moment when they were intimate, that the shaitan will not harm him, meaning the child. He will never harm him. He will never harm him. So you'll find, ya ma'ash al-ikhwa wal-akhawat, even those who are listening, it shows the shumuliyah or the comprehensiveness of our religion. How we've been commanded to always observe the legislated supplications that's a means of protection for us. Not only from the shayateen of the ins, the shayateen from mankind, because there are shayateen from mankind and there are shayateen that are unseen. For verily, brothers and sisters, as we know, that of course, in regards to the one you can see from the people, of course, one can fight himself off or defend himself with his body physically. Someone tries to come and harm you, you can physically ward them off and try to push them or fight them or what have you. Someone tried to attack you or harm you or your family or what have you. You try to defend yourself. Physically, you could probably do some type of effort in warding them off. But how would you ward off or protect yourself from something unseen? An unseen enemy. You can't physically punch them. You can't physically harm them. You can't push them. You cannot kick them. How do you protect yourself from them? So the message of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam, firstly Allah himself and what he's revealed to our Prophet, our Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, gave us all these different ways of now fighting the unseen enemy. The unseen enemy that wants to fight you and wants to harm you, and wants to cause you sadness and grief. Not only yourself, but even harm you in your family and in your children and in your lineage. So how do you fight him? You fight him by what the Messenger of Allah had what? Legislated. To the point where our religion, walillahi alhamd, has now taught us comprehensively every affair that will protect us, even to the point of when we're intimate, which you'll find that no other religion and no other way of life has taught us to this extent, where now you can be protected in every which way you can think of. Whether you go in the bathroom, whether you go outside the bathroom, whether you put on your clothes, when you go out the house, when you go in your house, when you get in your car, when you get on your riding beast, which of course is understood as a car today, or when you step outside, or even in the morning, or even in the evening. All these are affairs. A lot of people think, oh, it's just supplication. It's not a big deal. A lot of people don't realize that supplication, that's your fight to fight the unseen enemy. Supplication is in order to fight the unseen enemy that you can't fight physically with your hands or you cannot kick. So people have to look at supplication as a way to fight the unseen enemy that's been what? That's been entrusted to test you. or you to be tested by him. And the only way you can fight him is by these legislated, authentic supplications that has been legislated. To the point, walillahi alhamd, that you'll find that Allah has perfected His ni'mah upon us to the point where He has taught us to even ward off our enemy, to the point to let you know how evil he is, our unseen enemy, to the point where he even wants to harm you, even at the time of intimacy. How shaitan wants to even harm you to the point of intimacy. So you'll find that Ahl Ilm, that they'll mention to say, as even Sheikh Salih Fawzan says this, and I'll just mention this quickly. He said, أما إذا لم يأتي بهذا الدعاء فإنه حري أن يلابس الشيطان وَيُجَامِعَ مَعَهُ زَوْجَتَهُ. So nobody can say this is AbdurRazzaaq saying this from his own pocket. This is from Sheikh Salih Fawzan mentioned this. He clearly says it, and I said it in Arabic so people who understand Arabic can clearly understand it. وَيُجَامِعَ مَعَهُ زَوْجَتَهُ وَلَا يُجَنِّبَهُ الشَّيْطَانِ وَأَنْ يَضُرَّهُ الْمَوْلُودُ وَيَتَسَلَّطَ عَلَيْهِ وَدَلَّ عَلَى فَائِدَتِهِ فدل على فائدة فذكر الله عز وجل وفائدة الدعاء وعظيم نفعه حتى عند الجماع وهذه فائدة عظيمة. He says if a person does not mention this supplication in which the Prophet ﷺ taught, then he is deserving that shaitan will participate with him and he will be intimate with him, his wife. He will be intimate along with him, his wife. And shaitan will not avoid him. And he will harm his child. وَأَن يَضُرَّهُ وَأَن يَضُرَّ الْمَوْلُودِ. He will harm the child. And he will overpower him. He says, so this is an indication for benefit. That the mentioning or the dhikr of Allah or the remembrance of Allah and the benefit of supplication and how tremendously beneficial it is, even in the time of intimacy. And this is a tremendous benefit. So you see, everyone, now that's not my speech. You hear clearly the great Imam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve him. You'll find the great Imam, Sheikh Salih Fawzan, Hafidhullah wa ra'ah, wa ta'ala fi umri bil amal as-salihah. You'll find that he mentioned it says clearly that the one who avoids or abstains from this supplication, that the shaitan will participate in being intimate along with him, his wife. Similar to that, even when you eat, even when you sleep, even when you go to sleep. All these affairs have been legislated to protect you. You'll find that the Muslim, he always fortifies himself with these legislated supplications at the time when he eats, at the time when he drinks, at the time when he sleeps, at the time when he wakes up, the time when he leaves out the house, when the time when he gets in his car or his riding beast, or what have you, or when he enters the masjid, or when he leaves outside the masjid, or when he goes in the bathroom, and when he leaves outside the bathroom, and when he leaves out the house, and when he enters the house. The Muslim always observes those legislated supplications and remembrances in all of these circumstances as much as he can. Even at the time when he's intimate with his spouse, it's very highly recommended that he comes with this remembrance. And he says this dua that the Messenger of Allah has taught us to use to be as a protection and fortification and shield to protect you against your unseen enemy that wants to cause you harm. So the Messenger of Allah said, "O Allah, keep the shaitan away from us." Does the man say it or does the woman say it? You'll find that Ahl Ilm say they should both say it. The man and the woman. That both of them should say it. That they should both say it. Especially in regards to the man, is definitely highly emphasized that he say it because he's the one that wants to what? Of course, initiate it in most cases. But not all the time. But initiate the intimacy. But as far as later on, we'll talk about that. But as far as in regards to be safe and secure, to let both of them say it. So it could be what? It could be blessing in it for number one, the shaitan will now be put far away. It will remove him. And if he makes it, then the shaitan, of course, will not be able to harm the child. Because the one, usually, of course, is intimate with his spouse in order for what? He's seeking to have a child by her, to continue his progeny or to continue his legacy through his progeny and through his lineage and through his offspring. So a person, when he's intimate, of course, then one of the purposes of why he's being intimate is because he's seeking a child. He wants a child. That's one of the reasons. And it's not just merely satisfying his desires, and that's it. No doubt that's one of it. But we know one of the main reasons of why a person intends to be intimate, one of the main reasons that he's seeking a child, offspring, for her to become pregnant. So he makes this dua asking the shaitan to stay away from them and to also keep the shaitan away from what Allah will provide for us as a child. Now, the type of harm that takes place, is it harm in the religion? Is it harm in the body? Ahl ilm will say in this regard, it could be one of the two, or it can be both. That the shaitan, that the meaning of it could mean that he'll harm the child in his religion, or he might harm the child in his body. They'll harm the child in his body. That's also a probability. But both also likewise can be correct. At the end, we know that it's a harm in which the Prophet ﷺ taught us a way of how to remove it and to keep our children and ourselves protected. Why did they put that there? Oh, okay. طيب. So you'll find, ya ma'ashal ikhwa, that we was talking about جزاء الفاعل يقدر. Oh, there it is right there. There's a lot of different benefits that's extracted from these narrations. Like we said, number one, that the shaitan will not be able to harm the child ever. Meaning, all these different probabilities we mentioned, either in the body or either in the religion, that all of these are benefits one can attain if you just make this dua, of course. So the man, if he comes or becomes intimate with his family, he mentions this, and this, inshallah, bi'idhnillah, will be a reason for offspring to be what? Be protected. And I think that everyone, of course, does not want the shaitan to approach their child or the shaitan to come. As we see our newborn children and we look at them and we love them, I'm sure you do not want to see an unseen enemy to come and harm her or him or your child or your baby. So in order for that to be established, then one has to memorize these authentic supplications that the Messenger of Allah highly emphasized that we memorize and that we also likewise implement, which will be a means to protect our families from the unseen enemy. Right. Getting back again, returning back to what we discussed in the previous hadith. Notice, brothers and sisters, we was talking about, if you look in the ayah, we saying there was a refutation against the what? The Jibriyah, right, everyone? And in the previous hadith, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, come to your harvest how you will, right? Now, if you look at your books, if you look inside the narration in Buloogh Al-Maraam, look at your books, it says, if one of you wants to be intimate with his wife or his family, you'll find in that similar to what we mentioned is a refutation against the same sect called the Jibriyah. So that's important that you write that down. A lot of people think, oh, what's the importance of that? Trust me. You need to know the deviant ideologies of these deviant sects of the Muslims. You need to know them because they do exist these days. They do exist. Even though they're in the name of another deviant sect, but a lot of their ideologies are still applied. So it says, if one of you wants to be intimate with his family or his wife, in this is the same benefit we mentioned last class. The Prophet ﷺ is establishing for the creation again their will, the will of the creation. That if one of you wants to be intimate, he says, Lo idha arada an yatiya. If one of you want to come to his family, of course we know that the message of Allah ﷺ in these narrations is also to show how he had the best of character and the best of, rather he had exemplary character. You'll find that a lot of the narrations that the message of Allah used speech, and especially in regards to it not being explicit, but it being understood clearly of what was intended without being vulgar or explicit. Notice that he used in this narration, if one of you wants to come to his family, meaning that he wants to be intimate with his family. He didn't say in a matter that's very vulgar or a matter that's explicit. So you'll find from this statement here, if one of you was to be intimate with his spouse or family, it showed how the Sharia or the legislation of what Allah had revealed to the Prophet, that he came with words that showed, if you want to say, chivalry and honor out of respect, and brung words that were what? That was clearly understood what was intended without it being vulgar or without it being explicit. Is it clear what I'm saying so far, everyone? That the message of Allah is not vulgar in his speech. Alayhi salatu wassalam. So notice he said, if one you want to be intimate with his spouse or his wife, or come to his wife in a manner in a manner of intimacy. So it says, we said that the statement, if one of you wants to be intimate, also likewise is a refutation against the Jabriyah, against the deviant sect, the Jabriyah, of those who say that the actions of the servants have been forced upon them. They had no choice. And like we said, we refute this because of the tremendous danger that this belief will bring if one was to believe it. That's the reason why we bring it and we refute it. Can you imagine right now, brothers and sisters, if there were people out there that had this belief, what type of corruption will be caused in the earth, or would occur to people if someone adopted this belief? That someone now could come and kill you, kill your family, kill innocent people, kill innocent children, innocent women, innocent lives, and they'll all just blame it on Allah and say, well, I was forced, you had no choice. Will anyone accept that? The answer is no. No one would accept it from you. I killed someone right now. Killed your innocent child. Killed a baby. Oh, I didn't do it. That was forced upon me. The belief of the Jabriyah is ma'loom al-butlan. It's known of its invalidity and how evil and how disgusting it is, which no one should deny. Is it clear what I'm saying, sisters? Fine. So in this refutation, a lot of people think, why are you discussing this? This is because this is the danger of wickedness and deviation in belief system. Because it will lead you to being like an animal or word. Rather, it will lead you down a road of being worse than an animal. Worse. Because you'll find that the people who indulge in these type of ideologies and beliefs, this is what it led them down this road. To the point they started now killing innocent people because they believed that it was all forced upon them. Or you'll find that they started drinking intoxicants, they started fornicating, or they started consuming intoxicants and drugs with the belief that, oh, it's been forced, I had no choice. All of it is absolute nonsense. And you'll find from Ahl Ilm, they say, how did you know that Allah forced it upon you? Do you have knowledge of the unseen? Did you have knowledge of what Allah has written down in the Lawh al-Mahfuz in the preserved tablet? Did you see it? So it's all nonsense. How do you know that it was written for you to do this act? How? You don't have any knowledge of the unseen. You don't know what Allah has preordained. You don't have no observation of what's in the preserved tablet. You don't know what has been written down and what has been written for you. Because a person that now says this was forced upon me, that necessitates that you have knowledge of the unseen. You have knowledge of what Allah has preordained before you did it. Because now when you say that I did or I committed this act, that I killed someone or I stole from someone, and you want to blame it on the qadr of Allah, or you want to blame it on Allah, saying that Allah is the one that forced me to do this, it necessitates a lot of different evil beliefs. One of them is, like we said, to say that Allah is an oppressor. And from them is to say that I have knowledge of the unseen, to that I knew prior what Allah had preordained before I did it. And all of that is nonsense. No one knows what Allah has preordained for you to now kill an innocent individual or bystander and then try to say this was written upon me to do and that I was forced to do it. So that means you had knowledge of the unseen. You had knowledge of what was written in the preserved tablet of Allah or in the divine decree of Allah. You seen it. You read it. You seen it with your eyes. So that's what we're saying. All this type of ideology is what? Absolute nonsense. The belief of the Jabriyya is absolute what? Absolute pure nonsense. And we refute this, and we take the opportunity to refute it because of the danger of these belief systems. How it would take a person down the road of destruction to the point where if he was to really act upon these beliefs, he would cause major, major corruption in the earth. Major corruption. That's the reason why you'll find that the Salaf was very stern upon these type of deviant ideologies, because evil actions start with the what? It starts initially with the belief in the mind. When a person does an act and he wants to do something wicked and evil, it starts with the mind first. It starts with the belief first. Then the action is based upon how the mind or how the person thought in their mind. And then the person what? Comes with the act. Based upon what he thought or he or she thought. So that's the reason why you'll find that Ahl-Ilm really take the time to be very stern and assertive and rebuttaling all these different types of what? These type of ideologies and corrupt belief systems. طيب. From the benefit of this hadith, brothers and sisters, if you see in your books, it says, Barakatul Basmalah, the blessing of saying Bismillah. Because if you notice in the hadith, it says what, everyone? That the first thing, before he makes a dua, what does he say? Bismillah. For the Basmalah brings barakah, brings blessing. And it's an indication, of course we know how the Basmalah, how it's what distinguishes between what will bring barakah and what it will be, and how the barakah will be removed. For example, and when a person slaughters the meat properly, what is he supposed to pronounce upon it, everyone? Bismillah, of course, right, everyone? And if a person did not pronounce it, then the barakah would be removed to the point where it wouldn't be even halal for a person to eat from it. So it's to show the one that what? How the basmalah is very important. Even in the time before we indulge in our eating and drinking, that the mere basmalah, just to merely utter the basmalah, removes the shaitan away. So that shows the great blessing of just mentioning the basmalah or saying Bismillah. How it removes the shaitan and how that one word is very, very what? Is very, very important, and how much benefit it brings just in that mere word, of that word being uttered at the time when we indulge in all these different types of social acts, whether it be eating or drinking or sleep or entering the bathroom, and what have you. Is it clear what I'm saying so far? Everyone with me? Also from the benefits of the hadith is that the shaitan will not be allowed to be given power over the child. And he won't harm him. And it will not expose him or subject him to harm. طيب. Also from the benefits of this hadith, brothers and sisters, is in regards to this hadith, it says, if one of you wants to be intimate with his spouse, it's as if the Messenger of Allah is saying, as if he's saying, that in order for you to have a child, then you have to bring forth the reasons for it, which is getting married and carrying out the act of what? Of intimacy. Getting married and what? Carrying out the act of intimacy. That's the asbab. That's the reason. That's the reason. So what are we saying? Just to summarize everything. It's a refutation also, brothers and sisters, against those who reject the reasons. The reasons. They reject the means of why things happen. What do I mean by that? I think it's clear to some sisters. What I mean by that is certain people will say, I want a job, but they never go out and look for it. So that person has what? Removed the asbab, the means. The means, as we know, is to look on, as we know, alhamdulillah, has been facilitated to look online, to ask around, to go outside. Those are different ways. Those are called the what? The asbab, in which the Messenger of Allah ﷺ has clearly legislated in so many narrations that it's incumbent upon the one to get up and look, to look and do and carry out, which will be the reasons of why things will happen. And from the example is, for example, this hadith right here, meaning if a person, if you want a child, then you have to carry out the means for why a child will be conceived. For example, is to what? Look for marriage, get married, and then also likewise, what? To indulge in that act of what? Of intimacy. Those are the means of what will come as a result of it, a child being conceived. So if you want to say this hadith affirms and establishes that from the i'tiqad, from the belief system of Ahl Sunnah, or Ahl Hadith, and Salafiyin, that we affirm the asbab. We affirm the reasons of why things come about, or why things are brought into existence, or why things happen. For example, the asbab, or the reasons for me attaining a job, is to go look for it. It's to go out. The means for me, or the ways, the way I attain my food or my sustenance, I leave out and I go to the market and I attain the food and I bring it to my house. Those are asbab. No one can say, I want to be hungry, and they just sit in their house. Does anybody do that? Does that make any sense? I'm hungry, I'm just going to sit here and just wait for it to fall on my lap. You understand what I'm saying, sisters? Or I want a job, I'm just going to sit here and wait for it to happen. Or I want a child, but I'm not married, and I'm just going to sit here and wait for it to happen. All that is utter what? Nonsense. In order for what? For one to attain of benefit, he has to set out to do it, which is to actualize the asbab, the means. And we know that leaving off the means is qadhun fi hikmatillah, as we know. That leaving off the means is ridiculing the wisdom of Allah. Is ridiculing the wisdom of Allah, because Allah has legislated asbab in order to bring about the musabbabat. He has legislated asbab, means and reasons, in order for the musabbabat, in order for the result to come to place, or to become actualized, or to become a reality. What is the musabbabat? The musabbabat, for example, a child. That's the musabbab, that's the ultimate result. A job is the ultimate result. Becoming a scholar is the ultimate result of what? Of you setting out the reasons to become a scholar. Seeking knowledge, listening online, memorizing, reading, listening to lectures, listening to classes, finishing books. Those are the asbab. Those are the reasons. The ultimate result, the musabbabat, is the what? That you'll become, inshallah, a scholar one day, or a strong student of knowledge. So this hadith affirms that affair. However, we know that the asbab, we do not totally connect ourselves with the asbab. That's another part and belief that one should not, one should realize. One shall also realize that our hearts are not fully connected with the asbab. Even though Allah has legislated for us the asbab, we still have our hearts connected with Allah at the same time. And we do not connect our hearts with the asbab, with the reasons. Because even though Allah Ta'ala commands us to carry out the asbab, sometimes the result might not come. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? Is it clear what I'm saying so far? Sometimes when you go look out for a job, you might not get it directly, even though I did everything I could. I looked online, I asked around, I filled out these different applications to the end of it, but ultimately no one called me back. That does not mean to stop, though. Also, likewise, sometimes you're intimate with your family and the child, she might not get pregnant. Those things happen for a reason, because your heart is supposed to be ultimately connected with what? With Allah. So if Allah did not preordain that affair, then it was from some infinite wisdom that Allah knows and we do not know. طيب. So those from the deviant sects that deny the asbab, such that deny the means and the reasons of the Jahmiyyah and the Ash'ariyah, you would think in your mind that that this is something that's a no-brainer. That's a no-brainer for anyone to understand. But there are deviant sects out here that deny this. All the deviant sects from the Muslims you'll find believe in utter nonsense that totally doesn't make any sense. So based upon the belief of some of these deviant sects, that means that a child can be conceived like Maryam bint Imran, who's the mother of Jesus, the son of Mary. Khalas, she don't have to she'll just have a child out of nowhere. Based upon the ideologies of the deviant sects from the Jahmiyyah and the Ash'ariyah, that they say that the asbab have no effect, which absolutely doesn't make any sense. They said kanat, whether it be as far as the legislative matters or even in affairs of the worldly matters, which is materialistically, if you say, or which is tangible. It's basically, just to sum it up, they say it has no effect, which is absolute utter nonsense. For you'll find that what is correct, that this hadith and these narrations and others have firmly established that if one wants some good, then he should do his best to go out, to set out to attain it, and to make efforts to attain it, of whatever good it is, whether it be religiously, whether it be worldly. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us to set out and do the means to attain it, not to wait for it to come to you, but you go to try to do your best to what? Set out and attain it yourself. And that's in all of affairs of our lives, whether it be religiously or something beneficial worldly. You can't pass a test usually by what? Except that you go to school and you educate yourself and you read books and you memorize, you study, you review, until the ultimate result is you attain your degree or your reward, which is your degree, or what have you. That's in any type of affair of life, which is a no-brainer. But to these deviant sects, it's confusing. That's the reason why we said, if you indulge inside the beliefs and the ideologies of the deviant sects, it would cause so much confusion. Because it doesn't go with what people see, which is normal in life. In most cases, anything beneficial, you have to work hard and set out to do it. In most cases. There are a few cases that something might happen haphazardly, where a person might die to you, just say, for example, that person had to have wealth and you inherited it. But in most cases, the person has to set out to what? To attain what will benefit him. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? Because based upon a belief system, they say, for example, إِنَّكَ إِذَا ضَرَبْتَ الزُّجَاجَ. Basically, what they're saying is, now listen to this, some people probably laugh if I said that. He said, إِذَا ضَرَبْتَ الزُّجَاجَ بِالْحَجَرِ وَانْكَسَرَتِ الزُّجَاجَ برميها بالحجر فإنها لم تنكسر بالرمي انكسرت عند الرمي لا بالرمي. Just stupid. He says, verily, if you, for example, you used to strike glass, for example, break glass, you broke some glass with a rock. Based upon their belief system, meaning the Jahmiyyah and the Ash'ariyah, that basically the glass broke because of the rock hitting it. Not because someone threw it or somebody tossed it. We talked about someone who, for an example, someone took a rock and threw it. They threw it and the glass broke. So their belief system is saying that, no, it's not the person who threw it his fault. It's the rock when upon impact, when it broke the glass. It's confusing. It's nonsense. He said, and what's so strange is, even Shaykh Uthaymeen refused to disregard. Listen what it is. Listen to this. He says it's known that amongst human beings. If someone threw a rock at you, you're going to attack the person that threw it at you, not the actual rock itself. He says to the point where even dogs know. Dogs, if you even in animals, if you threw something at it, the dog is going to come after you. And the animal is going to come after you. And it's not going to chase the rock and try to attack the rock and kick the rock and hurt the rock. It's coming after you because it knows that you're the reason why you did that, why they were harmed or they were hurt, that you were the reason. But based upon their belief system, they believe that the rock or the glass was broke upon the impact of the rock. So it's the rock's fault, not the person that tossed it, which is absolute, utter, clear nonsense. Majority of the belief systems of the people of the deviant sects of the Muslims, if you was to really put it on a scale, you would think that how could people in the world believe this nonsense? طيب. If you notice in the hadith, brothers and sisters, it goes on to say, if this been preordained and destined, what time is it? Oh, I got to stop soon. So now, if you look in the narration, it says, if it's been preordained between the two spouses of child. If it's been preordained. So that also shows and affirms another deviant sect called the Qadariyah. That wording, if you look in your books, everyone, it says, if it's been destined or preordained between the two spouses, a child, the conception of a child. If it's been preordained, meaning Allah was going to what? Had it written down for it to happen, for it to take place, for it to occur. In that is another deviant sect who's the opposite of the Jabriyah. The opposite of the Jabriyah. So we said the Jabriyah believe what everyone, that the actions been forced. There's an opposite side of the extreme. So you have one extreme who say that the actions have been forced upon a slave and he had no choice in the matter. So now let's go from one extreme to another extreme. There's another deviant sect that have another extreme ideology and belief, which is called the Qadariyah. They're the opposite of the Jabriyah. They're the opposite. What do you mean by that? Meaning that they have full control over what happens in this world, and it has nothing to do with the will of Allah or the pre-divine decree of Allah or the destiny of Allah. They have full control over what happens in this world and in this existence, which is absolute nonsense. This hadith in your books, brothers and sisters, refutes that, because it's showing clearly here, if the affair has been destined, meaning if Allah has written that a child be conceived, then it will happen. So ultimately, after Allah or the Prophet ﷺ has affirmed the will of the creation in this hadith, he's also affirming the will of the Creator. Meaning that ultimately, even though you have your will to set out to do something and to do it, but ultimately the affair returns back to Allah. If Allah has preordained and destined that a child come as a result of this intimacy, then it will happen. So the message of Allah is saying here that it might happen and it might might not happen. Because he said, it says clearly in the hadith, in yuqaddar, if it's been preordained. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? So in this hadith is affirming likewise the will of Allah. And from his will is the divine decree and destiny, which to let you know that ultimately the affair goes back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and every good that we set out for. Ultimately the affair returns back to him. For example, you might set out to be a businessman and you do everything you can to work towards that. Something happened in the middle. Let's just say, let's start with something minor. Let's just say, for example, you set out for a business venture on a particular day. I was supposed to meet so-and-so at a particular moment in time, at a particular place, in order to finalize this business transaction between me and him. So you get up in the morning, you do everything you're supposed to do. You do the asbab. You wake up early. You make sure that everything is in place. You set out to get in the car on time. You left out at a good time to get there on time. You get there, he's not there. You understand, everyone? Let's just say that person you were supposed to meet, something happened to them where they couldn't meet you or something came up. So you couldn't complete that business transaction. That lucrative business transaction you was looking forward to what? Actualizing and finalizing. Because ultimately, like we said, the affair finally goes back to what? To Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Maybe for a reason, Allah did not want you to have it in that particular time and that particular day. For a reason that Allah knows and we don't know. Is it clear what I'm saying so far, everyone? Let's just say now you didn't get pregnant. Same thing. I'm giving numerous scenarios so we can know how to apply these texts. Because a lot of people, even though they read these texts, but they don't know how to apply it in their everyday lives. Similar to that, a lot of sisters out there, they want to get some sisters want to get pregnant, and they're finding hardship and getting pregnant. Type. Maybe this man who you with wasn't meant for you to have children by him, because if you had children by him, it might cause some damage to your religion. So you keep being intimate, nothing happens. Type. Ultimately, the affair goes back to who? Goes back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that shows and clearly establishes and affirms what, everyone? That this hadith affirms likewise a will for the Creator. The Qadariyya, the deviant sect called the Qadariyya, is the opposite of the Jabriyya. So we said the Jabriyya believed the actions were what, everyone? Force. Then you have the opposite side of the extreme, who are the Jabriyya, who are the Qadariyya. The Qadariyya say no. So the Jabriyya affirmed the will of Allah to the point where the actions have been forced upon them, the Jabriyya. The Jabriyya basically affirms the will of Allah to the point where they have no free choice, meaning the creation has no free choice. You had no choice. Khalas, Allah's will dominated over you. You were forced. You had no choice. Taib. The Qadariyya on the opposite side of the extreme, sisters. They're on the opposite side of the extreme. What do I mean by that? Meaning that the creation has their will and they have full control over everything without Allah's permission and without Allah's will. So that's the opposite of the Jabriyya. It's the opposite. So based upon that, you'll find that Ahl Ilm say that the Qadariyya, that would necessitate that there are millions of deities. Millions of deities that what? Create their own actions and create their own destiny. They have full control over their destiny. Full control. No one has no what? Control over your destiny. That's the belief of the Qadariyya. A person would say, does this exist today? And I say, yes, it does. You hear it on the tongues of the non-Muslims. And I've heard them say this in a lot of their speeches and a lot of their what? Statements. They'll say, for example, the future has not been written out for you. Your destiny has not been laid out for you. The pen has not been what? Dried. You control your own destiny. Life is what you make it. I've heard certain people say that. Life is what you make it. That statement has in it falsehood. Yes, it does. Meaning, no. Life is what? Yes. In a certain aspect, yes. We've been commanded to set out what will benefit us. However, the final affair returns back to who? To Allah. It returns back to Allah, what He ultimately wants. How many times I've heard stories of people who were in college for 4 years and they were excelling. All the way up to the last 2 weeks, something happened. Bang. And I've heard, and certain happened right at the 2 weeks before their graduation, they died. Did they have control over their destiny? Absolutely not. Allah decreed it. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? They had no control. Allah allowed it to happen for a reason. So that's to show that Allah has control. Ultimately, even though we have been what? We have our will. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala likewise has his will. And how many people out there who work hard? How many people out there, let's just say for example, for a person, how many people that have worked hard for a certain matter, but however, the results didn't come as a result of it. For example, I know people that play basketball sports, and they were working very hard, playing 15 hours a day, 8 hours a day, but they still didn't come out the results of what they were looking for. But however, now this is a clear example, because I've seen this happen to certain people. That their dream, an ultimate dream, was to be athletic, to play basketball, play sports, and they used to play 10 hours a day, 15 hours a day, devoted to being a professional. Then, ultimately, Allah did not want that for them. So they weren't given tawfiq. But however, the person became sad. I'm practicing so hard. I'm sacrificing my physical body to improve, to be the best and excel at this matter that I want so bad. However, ultimately the affair returns back to Allah. And maybe Allah restricted that affair or didn't allow that affair to happen to you because if you entered in that realm, you would destroy yourself. So Allah allowed something else of good to happen where you became a student of knowledge, for example. And he gave you tawfiq in that field. That is better than the basketball which you wanted. So ultimately the affair goes back to Allah, and it's not back to yourself. And if Allah does not preordain an affair, it's because of some good that Allah knows and you don't know. A lot of us, it's hard for us these days to apply these hadith. It's so hard because I hear people all the time, brothers and sisters, both. They cannot swallow the qadr of Allah. They can't swallow it. Why can't this happen? Why does this happen? What did I do? What did I do wrong to this not to happen? Or what did I do wrong for this to happen? What did I do? Ultimately, the affair went back to Allah. What did I do? I can't get married. I can't get married to a good spouse. Or I can't find a good sister. Or a sister can't find a good brother. And I've been sitting down with all these people and I just can't find what I want. And I just can't find what's suitable for my situation. I can't find until they get frustrated. You understand what I'm saying, everyone? That's because the affair goes back to Allah ultimately. When Allah wants an affair to happen, it will happen to you. But however, you need to not be hasty. I've seen things happen where you don't expect it. When you're not looking and bang, it happened out of nowhere. Where did that come from? Because Allah wanted it for you at that particular time. You understand? Then, because I'm sure everyone in this room has had circumstances where things happen just out of nowhere. Just instantaneously just happen. It's like, where it come from? It just happened. Because Allah wanted it to happen. He wanted it for you at that particular moment in that particular time. Allah wanted it for you. Then at particular times you'll find that you're what? For lack of better words, going cold turkey. What I'm looking for is what's going on. All this time is passing. I'm still not getting what I want because Allah does not want it for you yet. Or maybe He doesn't want it for you at all. Because if you did, you would harm yourself or you would hurt yourself. And I've seen situations, I told brothers personally, I've said this in my class before. When I was a new shahada back when I was 17, hey, that seemed like a long time already, wow. But anyway, when I was 17 and 18, and all the brothers and sisters, people was getting married left and right. And I was having a hard time getting married for years when I became Muslim. It took me years to get married, years. And I kept saying, why everybody getting married? And I'm doing everything I'm supposed to, getting married, sitting down, interviewing with sisters, what have you. But I didn't come up with what I was looking for. And I'm like, why is it so hard? Everybody else's situation is easy. Everybody around me getting married, everybody around me. But I also noticed everybody around me was getting divorced very quickly too. But at any rate, so I was saying, looking around, everybody was getting married. Me, it's fine. It's real hard for me to get married. It took me years. And I'm like, why can't I get married? What's the problem? Right? طيب. Then, when I finally got married, because I was being hasty again, when I was getting married, rushing the issue into a situation, of course, it's as if I was being taught a lesson. You wanted to be hasty? This is what your hands have put forth. Look, this is what happens when you're hasty. And then on top of that, looking years behind, or looking at all the situations of the situations I was sitting down, every single is as if Allah wanted to show me about his, and not saying about the unseen, but teaching you a lesson that you see all them sisters you sat down with, brothers who I talked to that married them, always complaining about them. Like, this sister crazy. She psychologically got some issue. And I said to myself, I sat down with her. I was about to marry her. Dang, I dodged that bullet. And then another brother came to me. Yo, I married so-and-so. And he said, yo, Akhi, she's driving me crazy. I'm doing everything I can. I'm providing for her. I'm working. And she's still complaining. And I said to myself, I was about to marry her too. You understand, brothers and sisters, where I'm coming from now? Same thing with swimming too. Same thing. You'll find that a lot of women situations you have avoided. Let's just make this clear as the sun in the sky for every brother and sister in here. How many situations have you been in that you wanted so bad, but it didn't happen for you, but at the end you can say, I'm glad I dodged the bullet on that one? Is it clear now? Jade. So that's what we're saying, that ultimately this group, the Qadariyah, we refute them by saying ultimately the affair where the Prophet ﷺ refuted the Qadariyah in this hadith. He refuted the deviant sect, the Qadariyah. The Qadariyah here. He refuted them by saying, if it's been preordained or decreed a child. This hadith here is affirming what? The divine decree of Allah. That his will has been established over the creation. And that ultimately all the affairs in our lives ultimately goes back to him of what he wants. Tabarak wa ta'ala ultimately. If he wants the child, he'll give it to you. And if Allah does not want it, he will not what? Give it to you. So as if the Prophet ﷺ here is refuting the Qadariyah by saying, O Qadariyah, the slaves and the ibad do not have full control. They have their will, just like the Lord of Allah, the Lord of the heavens, has his will. And the will of the creation falls behind the what? Will of the Creator. Is it clear, everyone? Jade, we'll stop here. Stop here. I gotta give myself a break. I've been talking for 2 hours straight. Huh? I'm sorry. What'd you say? I couldn't hear you. It's muttafaqun alayh. You have to get the book. It's in Buloogh Al-Maraam because it's in here. Oh, you got to. I think you could get the PDF for free. Yeah, Buloogh Al-Maraam. You could download a PDF. Type because it's for free. It's free if you got a smartphone. It's free. It's free. Like I said, alhamdulillah, I think there's no one in this room that have probably been through things in their lives to say, alhamdulillah, I'm glad I dodged the bullet on that one. I'm sure everyone has that type of experience. Everyone can admit that.